Hello everybody, Heyde here, and a very happy new year to you. I hope you're all enjoying the new year so far, a couple days in. But I want to kick off the year by actually showcasing my studio setup. It's something that a lot of people have requested from me for a long time, and I thought, I haven't done this in many years, and I think it'd be really cool to show you what my studio looks like. Now I want to preface this by saying two things. The first is, obviously, as you know, a studio is never done. It's always improving, changing, adapting, based on our personal needs. So what I'm showing you now probably will change, but I'm really happy with the way it is right now. And the second point I want to make is, it's not the studio that makes the composer or the creator. I have this gear, it's stuff I've acquired over a long period of time, but I don't endorse buying this gear simply to have it because I have it or somebody else has it. Buy these things when you need them, when it's the right time, when you can afford them, and be very careful and cautious about just thinking that this gear is gonna suddenly make you a better composer, because it's not very true. With that in mind, I am going to list the stuff in the description, so if you are in the market for any of these things and you want to check it out, you can check it out there, and those product links will be made as Amazon affiliate links, so I'll get a very small percentage, like a couple cents, for everything that you choose to buy, but if you do want to support me, you can actually use those links instead of buying it elsewhere. So without further ado, let's jump into the studio. As you walk in, you'll see a couple instruments that I pretty much barely use these days, and then on the left, you're going to see my studio setup, which is kind of the primary hub. I've got a couple of knickknacks hanging up on the wall, like the Frank and Zach Piano Duets Award we got from YouTube, my John Williams signature, and a couple of pictures from projects that I've been involved in. To the left of my studio setup, I've got the CP33, an old Yamaha stage piano I used to use quite a bit, and the Korg Prologue, which is a really dense synth that I use every now and again to get some new sounds. On the right is a window, and also a bookshelf that I just recently installed, containing a bunch of film scores and classical music that I like to study from. My studio desk, it's a big one. It comes from AZ Studio Workstations, and it is their Spike NR series. I actually had them modify this because I have really short legs, so they had to reduce the leg size by about 4 inches, but I'm really happy with it now, and it fits perfectly for me. I've used it for the entire time I've been in LA. The chair I use is an old refurbished Herman Miller chair, which I took the arms off because I don't really love having my arms sit on those armrests. It kind of gets in the way of me working with the keyboard and the mouse. If you are gonna buy Herman Miller, I definitely recommend you do refurbished because you can get a substantial discount by doing that. As for my monitors, the big one is a 4K old 55-inch TV I used to use. I have a Philips monitor on my left, which I think is a 27-inch because it matches my iMac, which is on the right, that is another 27-inch. These 3 monitors help me out greatly because I can have Logic on the big screen, I can have a movie file over on the right, and then I can have other files or my email on the left. This way's worked for me so far, and I think it's gonna be sticking with me for a while. For my speakers, I've got 2 Yamaha H5s. I've had them for many, many years and love them quite a bit. To be honest, I don't use these speakers too much for mixing these days, mostly for monitoring, simply because this room is not acoustically treated, so it's not great for that. Instead, I use my headphones, which are the Beyerdynamic DT990 Pros. I absolutely love these headphones. They are so good, so balanced, and they give me exactly the kind of feedback from my mixes that I want. Now for my primary composing setup, I'm using a couple of different tools. The first is obviously MIDI keyboard. I'm using the Williams Legato, which is pretty much just a random off-brand keyboard. I don't endorse any keyboard specifically. As long as you're comfortable with the action, they all essentially do the same thing, which is just input MIDI data into your DAW. The mouse I'm using is actually a Logitech mouse, which is designed for gaming, but the reason I like it is it has a bunch of buttons on the side, and I can program macros with it, which, if you know this channel, I'm very into macros. On my left, I'm using a Sparrow MIDI fader port. It's got 4 different faders, and it was 3D printed actually by someone on Etsy, which I think is fantastic, very affordable compared to other MIDI controllers that I've used. On my right, I'm using a Stream Deck, which I use primarily for large macro controls, things that I don't want on my keyboard, but maybe things more specific to like soloing multiple instrument groups at the same time, bouncing a bunch of tracks with a large macro that I've programmed, and changing camera angles on OBS, which I do pretty frequently. Tucked away in a little pocket here is my MIDI breath controller, which if you've seen this channel again, you'll know I absolutely love and use on everything, is the Tech Control breath controller, their cheaper model, which only has 1 cc value. I use it for modulation, but the reason I like it so much is it's so highly expressive in a way that it's difficult to get accurately with your fingers when you're doing faders for MIDI. And then sitting on top on a little stand is my iPad. I bought this refurbished as well, and I'm primarily using it for TouchOSC, which is, I think, like a $3 app on the App Store that lets you create your own custom MIDI layouts for different buttons. So I use those for articulation sets primarily when I want to switch articulations for my different instruments. On my desk, less organized, you'll see I have a bunch of drives. I've labeled them so that it helps me recognize what I'm unplugging so I don't ruin something. And I'm running 2 Samsung X5 drives, which are extremely fast for my projects and for my VSTs. The microphone that I've been using for the last few years is the Rode NT1. It is their next model up from the NT1A, which I was using many years prior. It's a pretty affordable microphone. I think it sounds really good for my voice. I have a couple of plugins I've used to tweak it, but overall it's been a great mic for vocals as well as for guitars and other instruments. The audio interface I'm using is the Focus 18i8, which is basically just a souped up version of their 2i2. I found it really useful for the instances where I've used multiple mics simultaneously, for example, trying to mic up multiple players, or even having multiple microphones for something like a piano setup. And the last thing, not really geared towards composing, but just towards this actual setup, is my camera. It is the Sony a6600, which is a very popular model, and I've just loved how easy it is to use. For me, I don't want to have to work too hard when I'm filming these videos. I want to just set it up and go. One of my favorite things is that it actually just records straight into my computer, so when I'm done, I don't have to unplug anything. I can just turn it on, record, turn it off, and start editing. And right here, less fancy, but I've got a little umbrella light sitting here. You never see it, but it's just tucked at the side. And the reason I do that is because if it's right in front of me, it actually kind of reflects onto my glasses, and that's a problem, something I've been working around forever. So I just have this in front of me so I can kind of manipulate it as I go. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that my closet is an absolute mess. I think it's just a prerequisite to being a creative person, but the closet's a mess right now. Eventually I'm gonna clean it out, but I have most of the stuff tucked away. So if my studio looks super clean, that's why. Again, if you're interested in any of those products, or if you have questions about them, check the description and leave a comment, and I'll get back and talk about more specifics of what they do. But I hope you found this studio tour helpful. I am so incredibly grateful to have all the things that I have over many, many years. Every day I come to the studio, I'm very, very grateful to be here and do this for a living. So thank you all who have helped to make this possible to some degree. And I hope you found it helpful. Thanks so much. Have a great 2022, and I'll see you in the next video.